On New Year's, we hear plenty of noise in the form of noisemakers, firecrackers, and shouting. A children's encyclopedia gives a reason for all the noise. Shh, it's only seconds till midnight. The old year is dying, the new year is almost here. As the clock begins to strike 12, noise fills the air. Church bells ring, people toot horns and blow whistles. Everyone shouts, Happy New Year. Why all the noise? It's one way people show how happy they are. It's also an old custom. Long ago, people believed that loud noises scared away evil spirits. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But one good thing about New Year's Eve, you get to stay up a lot later than usual. Besides the noise, something else is said in this quote. New Year's is a time when many people stay up late. According to Wikipedia, every year up to 1 million people gather in Times Square to watch the ball drop, and it is watched on video by 70 million people in the United States. This ball is dropped at midnight, thus requiring people to stay up late. The psalmist says, It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. For so he giveth his beloved sleep. Staying up late is not only not healthy for the body, it also has been proven to compromise our reasoning processes, and should not be done for unnecessary and frivolous things. You might find it of interest that the hour of midnight seems to be a time when occultists and pagans witness the work of Satan. In the book, A Trip into the Supernatural, we read what a Satanist priest had to say of the hour of midnight. The Master's altar was brought to its location in the same manner and by the same power the Druid priest employed to erect the Stonehenge structures, spirit power, or in other words, the process of levitation. The spirits have revealed to me the great accomplishments that of the Druid priests among the ancient Celts in France, England, and Ireland more than 28 centuries ago. I was shown that at the hours of noon and midnight during the full moon, the Druids levitated blocks of gray sandstone weighing as much as 28 tons into precise position to erect their places of worship. So Satan likes to work at the hour of midnight. God's time, on the other hand, is reckoned by sunset, as seen in the story of creation, and the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Another popular practice around New Year's and Christmas is drinking alcohol. In the article, Drunk Driving Deaths Hit Home at New Year's, the author, basing his statement on the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's statistics in December 2007, says, On average, there are 36 fatalities on American roadways every day. During Christmas, the average rises to 45 daily deaths and jumps to 54 on New Year's Eve. It seems that long car trips to see family, combined with feasts filled with eggnog and champagne, are the perfect recipe for drunk driving. At the end of the brief statistical summary of the NHTSA, they state, In summary, fatalities and crashes that involve one or more impaired drivers appear to increase significantly during Christmas and New Year's Day holiday periods. The number of fatalities per day of the holiday period, in such crashes during both the Christmas Day and New Year's Day holiday periods, is significantly higher than the fatalities per day for the rest of December. In Proverbs we read, Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth its color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. And wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. In contrast to holiday tradition, Jesus tells us, And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness, and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. We should be waiting for Christ to descend. This should be our focus, and nothing should be allowed to distract us. The abundance of holidays has ever been a distractionary technique. During festivals, huge crowds would converge on Rome's great amphitheater and many circuses to attend a day of games. In the vast Colosseum, up to 50,000 people could watch gladiators fight with wild beasts or other gladiators. These brutal spectacles were usually staged by the government, and one of their purposes was to divert the hordes of Romans unemployed. Eventually, as emperors continued to proclaim festive occasions, more than half the days of the year became holidays. We would do well to beware of frivolous merrymaking and drunkenness that causes us to be caught off guard to temptation. We see that it was during a time of merrymaking and celebration that Cyrus conquered Babylon. One book says this about Cyrus' invasion: "In their very feeling of security lay the source of their danger. Cyrus resolved to accomplish by stratagem what he could not effect by force, and learning of the approach of an annual festival in which the whole city would be given up to mirth and revelry, he fixed upon that day as the time to carry out his purpose into execution. There was no entrance for him into the city, except he could find it where the river Euphrates entered and emerged, passing under its walls. He resolved to make the channel of the river his own highway, into the stronghold of his enemy. To do this, the water must be turned aside from its channel through the city. For this purpose, on the evening of the feast day above referred to, he detailed 3 bodies of soldiers. The first, to turn the river at a given hour into a large artificial lake a short distance above the city. The second, to take their position at the point where the river entered the city. The third, to take a position 15 miles below, where the river emerged from the city. And these 2 latter parties were instructed to enter the channel just as soon as they found the river fordable, and in the darkness of the night explore their way beneath the walls, and press on to the palace of the king, where they were to meet, surprise the palace, slay the guards, and capture or slay the king. When the water was turned into the lake mentioned above, the river soon became fordable, and the soldiers, detailed for that purpose, followed its channel into the heart of the city of Babylon. But all this would have been in vain, had not the whole city, on that eventful night, given themselves over to the most reckless carelessness and presumption, a state of things upon which Cyrus calculated largely for the carrying out of his purpose. Are we ready for the coming of Christ, the King of Heaven? Or are we like the Babylonians, feasting and merrymaking, and unaware that we are being weighed in the balances of heaven? Now let us look at the holiday of Easter. Is this just an innocent day for children to hunt for eggs, and churches to hold sunrise services? Or does it have a more sinister, hidden meaning? First, where does the name come from? One writer said this: "What means the term Easter itself? It is not a Christian name. It bears Chaldean origin on its very forehead. Easter is nothing else than Astarte, one of the titles of Beltis, Queen of Heaven, whose name is pronounced by the people of Nineveh, was evidently identical with that now in common use in this country. That name, as found by Layard on the Assyrian monuments, is Ishtar. When ancient Christians were willing to die, rather than offer a pinch of incense to the goddess Astarte, why do we celebrate a day that bears her name?" Another source says, Easter dates back to ancient times and was later linked to Christianity. The holiday is named after the Anglo-Saxon goddess of dawn and spring, Eastro or Eastre. Many Easter traditions and symbols have to do with birth, good luck, and fertility. So the name Easter came from the pagan goddesses. Although some may say it came from Astarte, and others from Istro or Istre, it really doesn't matter, since both were pagan goddesses, and both originated from Semiramis of Babylon. In most, if not all pagan idolatries, there is a mother and a child god. This can be seen from the worship in ancient Babylon to the worship of Christ and Mary in the Catholic Church. Now, as we see, Christmas is the Child's Day, but now we see Easter is the Mother's Day. However, prior to Easter there is another holiday in honor of Tammuz. It is called Lent. One author tells us this: Lent is the commemoration of Tammuz's death. The legend of his death claims that he was killed by a wild boar when he was 40 years old. Therefore, Lent is celebrated one day for every year of Tammuz's life. Participants are to express their sorrow over Tammuz's untimely death by weeping, fasting, and self-chastisement. This is opposite of God's way of doing things. Interestingly, God had Israel wander 40 years for the 40 days the spies explored Canaan, whereas Tammuz has his followers mourn and fast 40 days for the 40 years of his life. In Ezekiel we find that ancient Israel participated in the ancient ritual that evolved into Lent. Ezekiel wrote, "He said also unto me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women, weeping for Tammuz. So we see that Lent is pagan. Now what about some of the other traditions done around this time of year? Although the word Easter is in the Bible, that does not give reason to sanction its keeping, because obviously there are words like Baal and Molech in the Bible. It is used in connection with Herod, who was a nominal Jew, and whether it is of correct translation or not, its mention does not sanction the keeping of Easter, nor does it mean that the Bible is in error. The word translated Easter took place after the days of unleavened bread. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea chose the date upon which Easter was to fall. Robert Odom writes, "The ruling of the Council of Nicaea that the Pascha should be observed by all Christians on Sunday each year on the same day observed by Rome was a tremendous victory for the Church of Rome. They chose to have Easter fall around the spring equinox." Now in Ezekiel, another ritual is described after what we know to be modern Lent. Ezekiel tells us, "Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east. And they worshipped the sun toward the east." Without a doubt, God considers sun worship to be an abomination. Yet this happens every year on Easter. The following is an excerpt from a so-called Protestant church. The church will hold a resurrection service at 7 a.m. conducted by, not to worship the sun, to worship the sun. Our service will begin outside at the memorial tree at 7 a.m. sharp. Resurrection services and sunrise services have their origin in paganism. As we have previously established, pagans worship toward the east because that is where the sun is first seen each day. They see it as its birth. Furthermore, if something is done correctly, should we really have to specify whether it is to worship Christ or the sun? But are sunrise services correct anyway? Was Jesus really raised at sunrise? Listen to what John recorded in his Gospel. "The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene, early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter and the other disciple, whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him." Mary Magdalene came while it was yet dark, and Jesus had already been raised. The other women came a little later, and that was at the rising of the sun. Thus things to do with the sunrise are pagan memorials of the sun god. In the tabernacle in the wilderness, built by the Israelites, God's presence was always manifested in the west at the Ark of the Covenant. "And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel." In order to worship the sun, you also have to turn your back on God. What about hot cross buns? Surely they are innocent, but are they? This is what the Encyclopedia Britannica says. It is quite probable that it, the word bun, has a far older and more interesting origin, as is suggested by an inquiry into the origin of hot cross buns. These cakes, which are now solely associated with the Christian Good Friday, are traceable to the remotest period of pagan history. Cakes were offered by ancient Egyptians to their moon goddess, and these had imprinted on them a pair of horns, symbolic of the ox at the sacrifice of which they were offered on the altar, or of the horned moon goddess, the equivalent of Ishtar of the Assyro-Babylonians. The Greeks offered such cakes to Astarte and other divinities. This cake they called bous, ox, in an allusion to the ox-mark symbol on it, and from the accusative bun, it is suggested that the word bun is derived. Like the Greeks, the Romans eat cross bread at public sacrifices, such bread being usually purchased at the doors of the temple and taken in with them, a custom alluded to by St. Paul in 1 Corinthians 10:28.